Today will be part 70 in the series Scriptures Often Ignored, and because it's part 70, we're going to be looking at the number 70 and seeing some of the occurrences in Scripture. And because this is a truth network, we use the restored names of our Father YAHUAH and the restored name of the Son YAHUSHA, as you can see right here, read in the Paleo Hebrew from right to left right here. We also use the restored title for our Father Aluah, which means Almighty One, Almighty Yahuwah singular, as found also in Deuteronomy chapter 6 verses 4 and Strong's H433. Now, before we actually look at the scripture, I just wanted to tell you a little bit more about the number 70 and how it also symbolizes order and power. It can also represent a period of judgment, as we're going to see with Babylon and the Babylonian captivity, but also note and pay attention how it's often associated with captivity and deliverance, and we're going to see that and how it plays a role in end time prophecy also when looking at the Babylonian captivity and much more. And also, I wanted to bring this to your attention too when it comes to Hebrew numbers or the Yahudiath language, that each letter actually symbolizes and represents a number, as you can see right here. Now, in the actual alphabet, there are 22 letters, starting right here with the Al or the Aleph and going all the way to the Thu or the Tau, and you can see the corresponding numbers right here, and each of the letter has a number and represents a numerical amount. And as you'll see right here, the number 70 is this letter right here, the Ayan. Now, of course, this is in the modern Hebrew. I'm going to show you a breakdown of it in the Paleo and even in the ancient Hebrew also. Now here is a chart of the ancient Semitic or Hebrew Yahudiath language, as you can see right here, and it goes from early, middle, late, and then to modern Hebrew with the modern letters right here. And of course we use these ones right here, the Paleo Hebrew, and then there's also the ancient Hebrew also. Now, if you would like to pause this, you most certainly can, because what you'll also see about this chart is that each of the letters, they also have a specific meaning to them. And if you want, I can leave this chart in the description box below so you can also take a look at it on your own time. But for the sake of this video, we're going to be looking at this letter right here, the Ayan or the Ayin. As you can see right here, this is how it would be written in the Paleo Hebrew, looking like a circle, because it's actually I. And the word right here, it means I, see, or experience. That's what that letter Ayan means, and it has the numerical value of 70. This definition here gives watch, know, or shade. So when we take a look at the number 70 all throughout scripture, we should definitely keep that in mind, the definition Hebraically and pictographically speaking, I, see, and experience. And so here are some of the places that we actually see the number 70 in scripture. Now we're not going to go over all of them, but we'll go over the main ones, and I'll be sure to also go over where you see the number 70 in Strong's Concordance later on in the video to come. But the first place we're going to go over right here is where you see the 70 descendants who went to Mitzrayim, or what's commonly known as Egypt, and the corresponding verses is right here in Brashayath, or Genesis chapter 46 verses 26 through 27, where it says, all the beings who went with Yaakov or Jacob to Mitzrayim, Egypt, who came from his body, besides Yaakov's sons' wives, were 66 beings in all. And the sons of Yahusha or Joseph, who were born to him in Mitzrayim, were 2 beings. All the beings of the house of Yaakov who went to Mitzrayim were 70. The other corresponding verses are found here in Shamuth, or Exodus chapter 1 verse 5, where it says, and all those who were descendants of Yaakov were 70 beings, as Yahusha was already in Mitzrayim, or Egypt. And then we also have too Devarim or Deuteronomy chapter 10 verse 22 that says, and this is Yahuwah speaking, your fathers went down to Mitzrayim with 70 beings, and now Yahuwah your Aluah has made you as numerous as the stars of the Shamayim, or the heavens. And note the similarities when it comes to the Babylonian captivity, because right at the beginning of Egypt we see that there were 70 of them, but right after the Egyptian captivity and right after the Exodus, they were made as numerous as the stars of the Shamayim, or the heavens. And when we read the book of Yirmiyahu or the book of Jeremiah, you'll see how similar they really are, but you'll also see how they're even similar and play a role with the end times. And then there was also the part where Jacob or Yaakov was mourned over for 70 days, as we see here in Brashayath or Genesis chapter 50, verses 1 through 3, where it says, and Yahusap or Joseph fell on his dad's face and wept over him and kissed him. And Yahusap commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his dad. So the physicians embalmed Yasharal, and 40 days were completed for him, for so are completed the days of embalming, and the Matsarium or Egyptian wept for him 70 days. And then there were the 70 elders who were appointed by Mashah or Moses, as we see here in Shemuth or Exodus chapter 24, verses 1 through 2, and also in verse 9 through 15. And it says here, and to Mashah he said, come up to YAHUAH, you and Aaron, Nadab, and Yahuah or Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Yasharal, and you shall bow yourselves from a distance. But Mashah shall draw near to YAHUAH by himself, and let them not draw near, nor let the people go up with him. Verse 9 says, and Mashah went up, also Aaron, Nadab, and Yahuah, and 70 of the elders of Yasharal, and they saw the Aluah of Yasharal, and under his feet like a paved work of sapphire stone, and like the Shamayim for brightness. Yet he did not stretch out his hand against the chiefs of the children of Yasharal, and they saw Aluah, and they ate and drank. Verse 12 says, and Yahuah said to Mashah, come up to me on the mountain and be there, while I give you tablets of stone, and the Thurah or Torah, and the command which I have written to teach them. And Mashah arose with his assistant Yahusha or Joshua, who has the same name as our Messiah actually, and Mashah went up to the mountain of Aluah, and he said to the elders, wait here for us until we come back to you, and see Aaron or Aaron and Kur or Hur are with you. Whoever has matters, let him go to them. And then verse 15 says, and Mashah went up to the mountain, and a cloud covered the mountain. We see a similar account of this in Bamadabar or Numbers chapter 11 verses 16 through 17 and also verse 24 through 25. Verse 16 says, then Yahuah said to Mashah, gather to me 70 men of the elders of Yasharal, whom you know to be the elders of the people and officers over them, and bring them to the tent of meeting, and let them stand there with you. And I shall come down and speak with you there, and shall take of the root or spirit that is on you, and put on them, and they shall bear the burden of the people with you, so that you do not bear it yourself alone. Verse 24 says, and Mashah went out and spoke to the people the words of Yahuah, and he gathered the 70 men of the elders of the people and placed them around the tent. And Yahuah came down in the cloud and spoke to him, and took of the root that was upon him, and placed the same upon the 70 elders. And it came to be, when the root rested upon them, that they prophesied but did not continue. Now we'll also be talking about the 70 years Babylonian captivity that was prophesied for Yasharal as a nation, specifically the house of Yahudah or Judah. Now we're here in Yirmiyahu or Jeremiah chapter 25 verses 11 through 14, but also pay careful attention to what Yahuah says in the language that Yahuah uses concerning what happens after the 70 years have been fulfilled. We're here in verse 11 that says, and all this land shall be a ruin and a waste, and these nations shall serve the sovereign of Babal 70 years. And it shall be, when 70 years are completed, that I shall punish the sovereign of Babal and that nation, the land of the Kashadaim or the Chaldeans, for their crookedness, declares Yahuah, and shall make it everlasting ruins. Verse 13 says, and I shall bring on that land all my words which I pronounced against it, all that is written in this book, which Yirmiyahu has prophesied concerning all the nations. Verse 14, for they too shall be enslaved by many nations and great sovereigns, and I shall repay them according to their deeds and according to the works of their hands. Now we see the same thing repeated in Yirmiyahu or Jeremiah chapter 29 verses 10 through 14, a very common passage that we're going to read together that says, for thus said Yahuah, when 70 years are completed, at Babal I shall visit you and establish my good word toward you, to bring you back to this place. So after the 70 years captivity, we know the story, and historically speaking, the true children of Yasharal were then brought back to the land. Verse 11 says, "For I know the plans I'm planning for you, declares Yahuwah, plans of shalom and not of evil, to give you a future and expectancy. Then you shall call on me, and shall come and pray to me, and I shall listen to you. And you shall seek me, and shall find me, when you search for me with all your heart. And I shall be found by you, declares Yahuwah. And I shall turn back your captivity, and shall gather you from all the Goyim, or the Gentiles' nations, and from all the places where I have driven you, declares Yahuwah. And I shall bring you back from the place from which I have exiled you." So we see the 70 years prophecy that Yahuwah gives regarding and concerning Babylon and the Babylonian captivity, that afterward there would be the restoration period. And if you would like to read more about that, you can read it and see the books of Azariah and Ezra, and also Nekamayahu, or the book of Nehemiah, to learn even more about that. And to learn more about the period following the 70 years captivity. But we know that nothing new is under the sun, as spoken of in Ecclesiastes chapter 1 verses 9. What happened before will happen again. And just like how this relates to the prophecy concerning Babylon, the 70 years, we also see too how this sort of relates also to the 400-year prophecy and the 400-year captivity of what? American captivity. And I've gone over this in plenty other videos, but we see the same type of thing, how we know, as spoken of in Yashayahu or Isaiah chapter 11, a second greater exodus is about to take place. And after the 400 years have been fulfilled, then we will return to our land soon enough, just as Yahuwah has promised us and has spoken throughout his word. So we see once again how these prophecies are very similar and fulfill the same type of thing. And just as Yahuwah had spoken in Deuteronomy chapter 10 verses 22, how there were 70 of them who went down to Mitzrayim, or to Egypt, in the beginning, but afterwards and after the first Exodus, there were so many of them, it was the number as the stars of the Shamayim, or the heavens. And just like after the 70-year captivity of Babylon, they were regathered to Yasharal and restored, and it's going to be the same with the second greater Exodus to come real soon. But sticking with the number 70, we also see the number 70 in the book of Daniel, or Daniel, with the 70 weeks prophecy in Daniel chapter 9 verses 24 through 27, which says, "70 weeks are determined for your people and for your Kadash, or made apart city, to put an end to the transgression, and to seal up iniquities, and to cover crookedness, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up vision and Nebiah, or prophet, and to anoint the most Kadash." Verse 25 says, "Know then and understand, from the going forth of the command to restore and rebuild Yerushalayim, or Jerusalem, until the Messiah the Prince, is 7 weeks and 62 weeks. And with this particular prophecy, it's also talking about how 70 weeks is the equivalent of 490 years. The reason that we know that is because we have to apply the day for a year prophecy as spoken of in Numbers chapter 14 verses 34. So 70 weeks is the equivalent of 490 days, but when you take the day in a year prophecy, 490 days would be 490 years. So that's what this is talking about. So we see here in this verse, from the going forth of the command to restore and build Yerushalayim, or Jerusalem, until Messiah the Prince, is 7 weeks and 62 weeks, or 69 weeks, which is the same as 483 years from the time of post-Babylonian captivity and the reconstruction of the YAHUAH, or the second temple, all the way up until the time of the Messiah. It shall be built again with streets and a trench, but in times of affliction. In times of affliction references the Maccabean period during the Grecian captivity, and also during the time in the period of Rome. And if you would like to read more about that, then please take a look at the book of Maccabees, because that will tell you the historic period of that time frame. Verse 26 says, "And after the 62 weeks, the Messiah shall be cut off and have not," or the Mashiach, "and the people of a coming prince shall destroy the city and the made apart place, and the end of it is with the flood, and wastes are decreed, and fighting until the end." Verse 27 says, "And he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, and in the middle of the week he shall put an end to slaughtering and meal offering, and on the wing of abominations he shall lay waste, even until the complete end, and that which is decreed is poured out on the one who lays waste." But we also see another account of the 70 elders and the abominations that were committed in the book of YAHUSHA or Ezekiel chapter 8 verses 11, where it says, "And facing them stood 70 men of the elders of the house of Yasharal, and in their midst stood Yazanyahu son of Shaphan. Each one had a censer in his hand, and a thick cloud of incense went up." Now, the context for this chapter has to do with Yahuwah showing Yahushua all of the wicked abominations that Yasharal was doing behind closed doors, even the ones of the elders who was doing it where they were worshiping and offering incense to animals, the works of their hands, and to graven images. Now, another interesting place that we see the number 70 is where it has to do with the length of a king's span or life. And we see that in the prophecy concerning Tyre or Tsur and Yashayahu, Isaiah chapter 23, verse 14 through 18, where it says, "Howl, you ships of the Rashayash or Tarshish, for your stronghold is laid waste. And in that yom or day it shall be that Tsur is forgotten 70 years, according to the days of one sovereign. And at the end of 70 years it shall be to Tsur as in the song of the whore. Take a lyre, go about the city, you forgotten whore, make sweet playing, sing many songs, so that you might be remembered. And at the end of the 70 years, it shall be that Yahuwah visits Tsur." So once again, we see judgment just like with Babylon. "And she shall return to her hire and commit whoring with all the reins of the arts on the face of the soil." Verse 18 says, "And her goods and her hire shall be made apart for Yahuwah, not treasured nor laid up, for her gain is for those who dwell before Yahuwah to eat sufficiently and for a choice covering." We even see the same thing for Malk Daud or King David in 2 Shamuel or 2 Samuel chapter 5 verses 4 through 5, where it says, "Daud was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years." So when he reigned at 30, reigning 40 years, 30 plus 40, there's our 70. In Kabarun or Hebron, he reigned over Yahudah or Judah 7 years and 6 months, and in Yerushalayim he reigned 33 years over all Yasharal and Yahudah. Other witnesses that we have for this is in Chronicles and Kings in First Chronicles or 1 Debarya Hayamayim chapter 29 verses 26 through 28, where it says, "Thus Daud son of Yashaya or Jesse reigned over all Yasharal, and the days that he reigned over Yasharal was 40 years. He reigned 7 years in Kabarun or Hebron, and he reigned 33 years in Yerushalayim or Jerusalem. And he died in a good old age, contented with days, riches, and esteem," so around 70 years old. "And Shaluma or Solomon his son reigned in his place." We also have First Malchayim or First Kings chapter 2 verse 11 that says, "In the days that Daud reigned over Yasharal was 40 years. He reigned 7 years in Kabarun or Hebron, and in Yerushalayim he reigned 33 years. Now we also see the number 70 in some key places also in what's commonly known as the New Testament. We see it right here where Yahusha appoints the 70 taught ones or disciples in Luke chapter 10 verse 1 through 3. It says here, "And after this the sovereign appointed 70 others and sent them 2 by 2 ahead of him into every city and place where he himself was about to go." Sounds just like the 70 elders that was appointed during the time of Mashah. Verse 2 says, "Then he said to them, the harvest indeed is great, or the harvest is plenty, but the workers, the laborers are few. Therefore pray the sovereign of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest. Go, see, I send you out as lambs into the midst of wolves." And then we also have here with the passage about forgiveness 70 times 7 in Mattathiah or Matthew chapter 18 verse 21 through 22, where it says, "Then Kappa, Peter, came to him and said, Sovereign, how often shall my brother transgress against me and I forgive him? Up to 7 times? Yahusha said to him, I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. Other places that you see the number 70 are right here in Bamadabar or Numbers chapter 7 that has to do with 70 shekels that were offered for the Hayakal or temple, and I just left the verses right there. We also see even more occurrences in Strong's H7657 or the number 70, which we're going to take a look at right now. Now we looked at the pictographic version of the number 70, which is the letter ayan, which means to see, experience, or to watch, but here it actually is used as shabayim, and this is according to Strong's H7657, where you see it in Strong's Concordance, and it has 91 occurrences. It's a cardinal number, and it's pronounced shabayim, which means 70. But out of these occurrences, sometimes it might be used for things or words such as 74 or 72 or 70,000. So you really have to go through each of these occurrences to really get a better understanding of what each one means. And we'll be sure to do that later on in a moment to come. But it's interesting how it comes from the word Shabbat, and how it originates and is actually the plural form of the number 7 from Strong's H7651, which is Sheba, which means 7 right here. So we see the number 70 comes from 7, which is also interesting because we know 70 is just 7 times 10. Well, we know 7 in scripture represents completion with the Shabbat and with the feast days, and we also have the number 10, which represents the 10 commandments. That too also representing completion, and I thought it was also interesting to note too the Day of Atonement, which is on the 10th day of the 7th month. And when you look at this pictographically speaking, you see that it has a shan right here, which means destroy or consume, a bath right here, or a bat, which means house or inn, and then it has the ayan once again, as we just went over earlier, which means I see or experience. Putting them together, you get see or experience the house destroyed, which actually happened to the house of Yasharal come Babylonian captivity. But once again, even in the pictographic, we see how it represents the restoration of Yasharal and what happened after the 70 years of captivity, just like this one after the 400 years captivity will be the period of restoration. Now, if you would like to look at the occurrences of where the number 70 occurs throughout scripture, like I said, you could take a look right here. The first place it occurs is in Barashayath or Genesis chapter 4 verses 24, and also many other places such as Genesis chapter 5 verses 12 and other places. I'll be sure to link it in the description box below. And interestingly enough, the dad of Abraham, Terah, lived to be 70 years old according to Barashayath or Genesis chapter 11 verse 26. But once again, you really have to look because see in other places the number 70 is used, but it's also used with the number 5 to mean 75. And I'll be sure to leave all of this in the description box below so you can definitely take a look in your own time, but prayerfully this gives you a better understanding of the number 70 and where it occurs throughout scripture. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or even recommendations on the scriptures, and if you would like more understanding, or if you just have any questions for me, please feel free to email me at truthunveiled77@gmail.com. Again, my email is just truthunveiled7727, not 3, at gmail.com. Also, if you have any questions regarding scriptures and if you would like a recommendation of what scriptures that I use and the scriptures that I recommend, also email me at truthunveiled77@gmail.com and make sure to put scriptures in the title of the email. If you have any questions about anything else, please be sure to email me. Prayerfully, this lesson was very helpful unto you. This is Truth Unveiled here, saying shalom.